Last week, North Korea made good its promise of launching a rocket that was supposed to send a satellite into orbit. Unfortunately, the launch was not successful as the rocket crashed into the Korean Sea just minutes after takeoff. While they could not stop the rocket launch, the United States and its allies in Asia, South Korea and Japan, condemned the action, and the U.S. has cancelled a proposed food deal with North Korea. The U.S. said the launch violated terms of agreement on the deal. Now, days before the launch, South Korea and Japan had beefed up their defenses should the rocket venture anywhere other than announced. And then the West turns its attention to Iran, known for its defiance of the international community and its decision to continue to develop nuclear activity. It claims that it's for useful purposes, peaceful that is. Leaders resumed six-party talks over the weekend, and we're asking if that's enough to help them change their minds. I am Amarachi Ubani, and this is Diplomatic Channel. Well, North Korea has been celebrating 100 years since its founder, Kim Il-sung, was born. Apart from the statues of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il standing side by side in public view, it launched a rocket that was supposed to put a satellite into space. That failed, and on Sunday, new leader Kim Jong-un made his first televised public speech, offering respect to his grandfather Kim Il-sung and late father Kim Jong-il. There was also a huge military parade in the main square, which unveiled what appeared to be a large new missile 2 days after the failed rocket launch. North Korea's state media showed thousands of soldiers carrying red flags marching into the square to the sound of drum beats during the parade. Kim Jong-un's speech is the first he's made in public since taking power following his father's death in December. Talking about South Korea, he said peace was more important than national pride. He also said the time when nuclear weapons could threaten and blackmail his country was forever over. The speech marks a significant change in profile for North Korean leaders. On Friday, the country launched a UNH-A3 rocket, despite calls from the international community condemning it.
Members of the Security Council deplored this launch, which is in violation of Security Council resolutions 1718 and 1874. Members of the Security Council agreed to continue consultations on an appropriate response in accordance with its responsibilities, given the urgency of the matter.
Shortly after the failed rocket launch, the country unveiled giant statues of its former leaders Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il, as Kim Jong-un received a top military position. Kim Yong-nam, president of North Korea's Supreme People's Assembly and the country's second in command, said Kim Jong-un had commissioned the new statues for his grandfather's birthday, known as the Day of the Sun to North Koreans. The rocket launch was surrounded with much hype meant to burnish the credentials of North Korea's new leader, Kim Jong-un. Journalists and observers were even invited to the normally reclusive country. A Russian space policy expert, Yuri Koresh, among those invited to Pyongyang, said the failure was not a huge setback.
For these countries to improve their rocket technology. So I would be quite surprised if the third launch of the North Korean rocket would end up in success. Although I believe that they have from 50 to 70% chances to successfully put the satellite.
The failure is the first major challenge for Kim Jong-un. North Korea had planned to make 2012 the year to become a strong and prosperous nation. In fact, the launch was timed for the 100th birthday of the nation's founder. Though the satellite project was not a success, it did not dampen a grand ceremony that unveiled a new future for North Korea. Well, this is one of those weekends during which talks don't seem to be making any sense or any headway for that matter. At least that's what it looked like. The six-party talks resumed over Iran in a bid to convince the country to stop uranium enrichment. Iran still insists it is for peaceful purposes. It says as an International Atomic Energy Agency member and a signatory to the Non-Proliferation Treaty, it has a legal right to produce nuclear fuel for its research reactors and nuclear power plants. And in fact, Iran's chief nuclear negotiator, Saeed Jalili, says Tehran does not intend to stop producing uranium enrichment to a purity level of 20%, as requested by the group. Both the 5+1 group and Iran have agreed to meet again on the 23rd of May, and Iran says this time talks should be based on confidence-building measures which would build the confidence of Iranians. Since Iran and North Korea both have uranium enrichment in common, I spoke with Professor Prof Dokubo of the Nigeria Institute of International Affairs via telephone on the future of relations for the two countries. First of all, thank you for speaking with us on Diplomatic Channel.
You're welcome.
Okay. The United States and its allies believe that North Korea was not just launching a satellite into orbit, but was testing a nuclear weapon. Is that what you thought as well when you learnt about the launch of the rocket?
No, I think sometimes because of the close nature of the North Korean society, we try to impute things that are not sometimes true. This is a country that is starving, they couldn't feed their own population. But I strongly believe that that was a genuine satellite test. They've done other things, they've tested missiles before. I see no reason why they should conceal this to the international community. It is sometimes, we feel so guilty because of the issue in the Korean Peninsula, in the Korean Peninsula, and other areas where you have known tension. So that's where every time there are things like that, the feeling of the West or those who are concerned, they always try to play it up more than it is in the places. So we have to be very careful.
Okay, so what did you make of the secrecy with which the rocket was launched? Japan and South Korea were on standby. You had members of the media already in a sheltered place, but yet there was no word on the satellite being launched until midday when the announcement was made on state television that it took off and it crashed.
We also know that they invited international media for the first time of any launch in North Korea. They invited the international media to come and look at it and come and see. I listened to the interview by one of the scientists there. It was mainly a satellite that the international media for the first time was there. So sometimes, because of the suspicion between these two sides, the West and the North Korea, we don't even know at times when they are saying what is right or what is wrong.
Okay, but for a country that can barely feed its people, yet it indulges in the development of nuclear activity, how possible is it that they maintain any kind of relationship with other countries in the international community?
I think North Korea has been an isolated, hermit-like country for some time, and that it has been going on regardless of the problems, the internal dissensions, and the hunger problems in the country. For how long it will take, I don't know. There was this idea of the sunshine policy between the North and the South, when it was believed that food would be sent to the North, and that they are going to normalize relations where you can have visits from both sides of the curtain. But eventually, it didn't take place again because of the attack that was launched by the North on certain parts of the South. So it's a country that one is wary of, but one should not also close all doors that because they are bad or because there is no democracy in their own country, that everything they do is ill. Sometimes, they have this sort of the cult of personality that has grown over the years since the foundation of the foundation of that country. So some of these issues that they try to develop, like this satellite or missiles, whatever, to commemorate the 100 years or 100 years of the foundation of that state, they are into all sorts of things. How can they send satellites to stray where they are going to sing for the sing songs of praise for the founder of the country? These are things that they partake. We should just look at them in that way and sometimes underplay whatever we think that we believe that they are doing.
Okay, well, the US, South Korea, and Japan condemned the rocket launch, as so did the United Nations eventually. But was there anything the UN could have done to have stopped the launch of that rocket?
I doubt if there is anything. North Korea is known for its behavior, for that type of behavior. They don't take cognizance of sometimes what the international community says. And then also, I want people to also understand, if during the period of the Cold War, it was believed that what has kept the peace was the possession of nuclear weapons. Countries like South Korea have a genuine problem and concern of their security. So if they are fabricating nuclear weapons and nuclear technology, which they claim they are not, one must also know that they need security. If nuclear weapons could maintain peace during the post-war period, the Cold War period, then what is wrong with it? Is it because it's a communist state that we are becoming so wary? Is it that any people that don't behave, any group of people, countries that don't behave the way we expect them to behave, then we have to stigmatize them and then term them to be all that we think of? The same thing is about Iran also. So one has to be very careful. And then sometimes we have to even examine what the West wants.
Well, speaking of Iran, talks resumed this weekend between Friday and Saturday, and as usual, it was about nuclear weapons in Iran. Do you think that Iran is developing nuclear weapons?
That's a million-dollar question. The fact also remains that they've got all the ingredients that could make the nuclear weapon. But from what they've said, it's all for peaceful purposes. And if you look at Article 4 of the UN Treaty, on the NPT Treaty, it is clearly stated that countries that are party to the NPT Treaty are allowed knowledge to peaceful uses of technology. These countries have not, they said that what they are pursuing is a peaceful purpose. Although we know that there is the demarcation between peaceful and weapon purposes are blurred, we have to be very careful. By the spirit of the law, they have not done anything wrong. They are signatories to the NPT Treaty, and they must be given access to knowledge to peaceful uses, which they claim they are. What of those countries that are not parties to the treaties have been given more knowledge and more openness to nuclear matters than countries like Iran?
But the international community is sort of scared that Iran obviously is lying. I mean, it has said before it was not developing nuclear weapons, and then a new plant was found, and North Korea, of course, is also developing nuclear weapons. What really, I mean, is the world in danger of these countries getting their hands on nuclear weapons? Is the world in danger?
I don't believe so. I don't. We are trying to play that threat too much. The fact is that when India and Pakistan acquired nuclear technology, this was how the West behaved. Is it that people who are Asian and brown-skinned people should not acquire this technology that, in most cases, has been accepted as a way of life by those who accuse them? One must be very careful. These are nations, they are signatories to the NPT Treaty, which is a regime that we know that is meant to guide the development of peaceful nuclear devices. So why must we accuse them? Until it has been proven. Israel has been accusing Iran. He wants to attack Iran, but that's the country that has nuclear weapons. Why is it that the West is not saying anything about Israel's acquisition of nuclear weapons? So I think it's not only double standard, but in certain cases, triple standards that they're playing.
Well, the United States, of course, is very interested in what's going on in Iran. But what if it cannot stop countries like Iran and North Korea carrying on with, the development of nuclear activity? Would that hurt, the relations with the Middle East and with Asia? And how would that be reflected back home?
The fact is that these countries are entitled to peaceful nuclear use of peaceful nuclear technology. They are entitled to it by even the NPT Treaty. But the US in particular, and the West in general, they are more concerned about acquisition of certain what we call sensitive technologies, like the enrichment technology, because once you have an enrichment, the route to weapon technology is quite easy. But also enrichment gives them further independence. They don't want to be dependent on the West that will give them the enriched uranium, which one day there's a problem, they cut off. So they also not only being independent,
independent of getting a nuclear reactor, but also being independent of the West. So we must also understand that the calculation of these nations that are trying to acquire all the sensitive, the fuel cycle, the nuclear cycle, those want to acquire it. They acquire it also because of independence. They don't want any other nation to be dependent on any other nation to supply them these sensitive technologies.
Okay, I just have one last question, and it's about North Korea. A few weeks ago, the North signed a treaty with the U.S. For food aid. In exchange, they will suspend, development of nuclear activity. But of course, that has been suspended now because of the rocket launch. Does the international community have a responsibility, to feed North Korea, knowing that now the U.S. is stopping, the supply of aids and food to North Korea? Does the United Nations, does it have any responsibility to help feed the people of North Korea?
If the United States stops, China will give them food. Because for Chinese, North Korea is a buffer between the West and them. And that for a long time they've stated that if they've kept quiet during the Korean crisis, that if they not intervened, then the next door to them will be the West. So if the West refuses to supply China food, Chinese will supply them food. The Chinese will, and then the West also believes that this will, because they have a dangerous technology. If you don't give them, they might use it. So there will be always a means of discussion, and containment. I will also bring your mind back to Iraq. When Saddam Hussein said that there was no weapon of mass destruction, the West did not believe him. They attacked him. Now, North Korea said they have nuclear weapons. They are discussing with them. So what we see in international relation is this. The big fish eat the small fish, and the small fish eat worms. Simple. You are negotiating with those who say they have. Those who don't have, you attack them. So one has to be very skeptical about whatever information the West produces about the acquisition of nuclear technology by these two countries. These countries are pariah states. They know why they are living for. They also know what they want in life. So they also realize that nuclear weapon is not just like a big bomb. It's, in fact, if it is used, the living will envy the death. That we know. So they are not kids. They don't need lessons on nuclear prudence from the West that have already used nuclear weapons before. That's my take on that.
Professor Dokubo, thank you so much for speaking with us.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Bye-bye.
When we come back on the program, Syria's peace plan began on a fragile note. The UN makes a decision to wade in. Do join us again.
Did you know that having a simple knowledge about health can help save a sizable portion of your income? Well, I'm just an inquisitive journalist going from one health institution to the other, bringing you all the information on healthy living and medical issues bothering on men, women, and children's health. Get first-hand information on the latest in the health world. Health News, promoting good health.
Welcome back. April 12th was supposed to be the start of ceasefire in UN Arab League envoy Kofi Annan's peace plan, but it's a plan already threatened by both the rebels and the government, as violence from both sides leave many wondering if the fighting will ever end.
Tout ça donc dans la note en fond de saga.
A peace plan gone awry. It's taken a long while for Syria getting to a point where an agreement is made concerning ceasefire on both sides. Mistrust on the part of the government had stalled further move on the issue. Early last week, UN Arab League envoy Kofi Annan said he had received assurances from the government it would observe the ceasefire on the 12th of April. After days of gunfire, Mr. Annan still believes Syria will get to the place where peace becomes normal.
On Tuesday, where he will be attending the coordination committee of the League of Arab States, the Arab League Ministerial Committee on Syria. Of course, he will be meeting the Secretary General of the Arab League, Deputy Leader.
The UN passed a resolution on Syria on Saturday, authorizing the deployment of unarmed observers who could be deployed as early as this week. There was talk about the size of the group, hoping to be as much as 25 to 30.
The recent violence threatens to return both countries to full-scale war, and the period of tragic loss of life and suffering, destroyed infrastructure, and economic devastation, which they have worked so hard and so long to overcome.
On Sunday, activists reported fresh crashes with heavy shelling in Homs, while rebel fighters reportedly attacked a police station in Aleppo province. UK-based Observatory for Human Rights reported heavy shelling in the Chaldea and Bayada districts. There were also reports of machine gun fire from Syrian troops. Number of the dead has been put at 32 since the ceasefire began on Thursday. Although levels of violence in general are lower than pre-ceasefire Syria, the government has still to conform to one key element of the 6-point peace plan that requires the withdrawal of tanks from towns and cities. Saturday's UN resolution was passed after Russia approved a revised text. But U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Susan Rice, said the continuing violence raised renewed doubts about the sincerity of the Syrian regime's commitment to the ceasefire.
The Security Council held consultations to address the Syria situation.
Kofi Annan's plans aims to end the violence that has been on since March last year. The UN says more than 9,000 people have been killed, but the government disputes the figures as being much lower. Now, as we close, our question for the week: should North Korea and Iran be allowed to continue uranium enrichment? Send us longer comments on our page on Facebook. I am Amarachi Ubani. I'll see you next week.